Hello and welcome to bowl game, like our first wave of bowl games, of course, because they're also spread apart, and I want to make a video. And yeah, let's just get straight into it. So this one will kind of be relatively short. First off, we have UTSA versus Troy, and I'll do prediction first and then review. I said this one was going to be a lot more higher scoring than it was, and to be frankly honest, at least Troy should have had a much higher score than they did. But honestly, it was just such a garbage, god-awful game. I was very disappointed when I was watching it because I wanted these two teams to have a great matchup, the small schools going at it. And yeah, the first quarter saw nothing but a safety. And then the second quarter saw a touchdown by UTSA and a field goal. And with 50 seconds left, Troy put down 7. In the third quarter, towards the end, Troy finally put on a touchdown and then a 2-point conversion. Make it a 3-point game. Why not? And then Troy in the fourth quarter takes a field goal. That is it. But the scary thing is, let me show you the final score. The scary thing is, and why it should have been a much higher scoring game, is UTSA had 5 turnovers, and they were 1 for 3 on fourth down conversions. How does one team have so many givens? Troy gets so many givens, and they can only put down 18 points. Whereas even UTSA had some opportunities. Troy was 1 for 2 on fourth down conversions, and they got 2 interceptions. Now, granted, one of those interceptions was literally right before halftime, but it still took away points because Troy got an interception like right in the red zone and got brought back by a personal foul, stupid penalty, but they could have gotten 3 to expand their lead a little bit. And put UTSA in a scarier situation, but that saved them. So basically, we'll say UTSA had 4 turnovers, Troy had 1. But the thing is Troy had total offense. They had 153 yards, 113 passing, 40 rushing. Yards per rush, 1. 42 rushing attempts. That is so bad. That is so bad. There weren't a lot of penalties at all for Troy. They had 2. And the pass completion rate was literally like a 53%. And honestly, Troy's offense really disappointed me, a letdown for how much they dominated in their championship game. They were really offensive. I thought they were a more offensive team just off of a first look, and they did not show up. But even UTSA, yes, 5 turnovers and 2 fourth down conversions that don't go your way is going to hurt a lot, but UTSA had 345 yards of total offense. It's just like they really struggled to get her done. And if UTSA did not make a lot of mistakes, this was UTSA's ball game by a million years. But Troy comes out on top because of UTSA's mistakes. And to be honest, I don't even know what the players looked like in this game. They could have had a bunch of their starters out, both teams. It could have gone like that because, it's a bowl game. You never know. Next up, we have Cincy versus Louisville. I'm pretty sure I got all my bowl games wrong. I'm pretty sure I got them all wrong. But I said Cincinnati would win this one by a decent bit too. To be honest, I didn't think Louisville was that good. I think the ACC is overrated as shit. And I gave Cincinnati some hope, but cut me some slack. It's really hard when determining these AAC teams because they play other AAC teams. For instance, Cincinnati lost to Arkansas at the beginning of the season. When they step outside of their conference, they struggled. And even in their conference, they really struggled. Yes, they were a 3-loss team, but they also barely beat Tulsa at Tulsa by 10 points. Tulsa was not a good team this year. They barely beat South Florida at Cincinnati by 4 points. I think South Florida had 1 win entirely this season. They beat SMU by 2 points at SMU. Then they got beat by UCF. Then Cincinnati beat Navy. beat East Carolina by 2 at Cincinnati, beat the crap out of Temple. Temple was not good. And then they lost to Tulane. So I should have looked at it more, but to be honest, I give Cincinnati hope because I also look at Louisville's schedule. Louisville really struggled with UCF. Louisville got their butts kicked by quite a few teams. They even lost to Boston College. They kicked butt certain times, but they also got their butts kicked a lot. And so I didn't really know. This could have gone either way. I gave it to Cincinnati because, I try to root for the AAC teams sometimes, but I was just wrong. Cincinnati couldn't get anything done. Let's be real. This should have been 0-24. Their touchdown pass, the quarterback was literally going down for a sack and just threw it to his running back who was wide open or whatever. I don't know if it was a running back or just like a tight end or a wide receiver that was sitting wide open. Threw it to him. He gets it, runs for first down, and then breaks off and gets a touchdown. And that was how they scored. It was literally a miracle, and that was it for Cincinnati. What really showed up more than anything was Cincinnati's defense. I mean, holding a team to 24 points is not bad, especially an ACC team. That's a situation where your offense needs to show up, and honestly, Cincinnati's offense did not show up. They just were absent other than that one lucky-ass touchdown. They were just absent. And, of course, I mean, you can only hold a team to so many points. Louisville's got a decent offense. They've scored plenty of points in all their games all season. They have a decent offense. Their defense was able to maintain the Cincinnati offense way too easily, though. And honestly, it was just sad watching Cincinnati just get rolled the whole time. SMU versus BYU. Before we go on to this game, I actually want to see what the team stats of the Cincinnati game looked like. Wow, Louisville had 4 turnovers as well. Cincinnati had 2 turnovers, and they didn't get a 4th down conversion. But yeah, look at total yards for Cincinnati, 127. Total yards for Louisville, 419. Like, it was Cincinnati's offense, really, that was not getting it done. They were struggling very hard in that category. This was a game, BYU versus SMU, was a game I said BYU was going to take handily. If we look at BYU's schedule compared to SMU's schedule, I mean, BYU beats the crap out of South Florida. Not a good team. They beat Baylor at BYU. They get their butts kicked at Oregon. They beat Wyoming. They beat Utah State. Then they lose by 8 points to Notre Dame. Then they get their butts kicked by Arkansas. Then they get their ass kicked by Liberty. Lose by 3 points to East Carolina. But then they beat Boise State, beat Utah Tech, beat Stanford. I think the most impressive game here would have to be that either the win over Baylor or the win over Boise State at Boise State. That was more what I was looking at. And compared to SMU's schedule, which was all over the place, SMU kills North Texas. Then they kill Lamar. Then they lose by 7 points to SMU. That was actually a more impressive game. Lost by 8 points to TCU at SMU. That's an impressive game. But then they get their ass kicked by UCF at UCF. Then they play in a shootout against Navy, win that. Then they lose by 2 points to Cincinnati. Then they beat Tulsa. But this was where things got sketchy. They won 77-63 against Houston, and I was like, and I start looking at SMU's schedule, and I'm like, this team might have a major defense problem. All their games are like literally around the 40s. But nonetheless, they go on to play at South Florida, beat them. And then they get killed by Tulane at Tulane. And then they barely beat Memphis. Comparing the two schedules, I would say BYU's was a better look. And I was like, honestly, BYU should handle this team. They should handle them. Because honestly, it's also an AAC team, so we never know. But it was a very close game. I mean, good call for the bowl game, guys. That was a fantastic call. Such a balanced game. Both teams had 1 turnover. Both teams got 2 4th down conversions, except SMU didn't get 1. They went for 3, got 2. BYU went for 2, got 2. But where it really came into play was SMU's yardage. SMU had 218 yards of passing and 171 yards of rushing for a combined total of 389. BYU had 256 yards. That's a significant difference. That's 100 30 yards less than SMU. But their real powerhouse came on the rushing ground. They rushed for 209 yards, but they passed for 47 yards with a 7 of 12 completion rate, which means they were not throwing the ball. Does that mean the BYU quarterback decided he didn't want to play? Does that mean they have a bad quarterback? I don't know. Whatever it means they were not going for passing plays ever. BYU ultimately maintained the ball for longer. And, I mean, it came down to seriously a point. I think SMU tried. Yeah, SMU scored a touchdown and literally lost the game because they went for a 2-point conversion and didn't get it. I believe SMU should have won this game when we look at the stats, but BYU survived. Honestly, I just don't agree with the call to go for 2 points. It seems a lot of teams are doing that this year just to try and beat the team at the last second, take a chance. You think you got it, but I just honestly think you play the safe game. It's a bowl game. Like, you kind of got to win this. Like, this is what the whole season is. You play all your games for the bowl game. And even though people don't really care about the bowl game anymore, you play all your games for the bowl game just to go for 2 and lose it. I don't agree with that. But BYU survived. A very close game. Very good matchup between the two. I don't really know what happened to BYU in the passing game. But, yeah. Washington State versus Fresno State. Now, all right, I know I gave this one handily to Washington State. One, because Washington State is a much better team than Fresno State. That is obvious. But in terms of bowl game, Washington State lost, from what I know, a lot more than Fresno State. Literally, Arizona State University, ASU, took the Washington State defensive coordinator, and he's ours. I don't really know who was out or anything like that, but Fresno State rocked this team. This was a game I didn't watch personally. I didn't watch the BYU one either, but I was keeping it updated. Fresno State didn't have any turnovers. They didn't get a 4th down conversion, but Washington State had a interception, and they tried going for a 4th down 3 times and only got it once. Washington State had 182 yards of total offense, did terrible rushing, and Fresno State had 501 yards of offense. Now, what does this mean for Washington State? To me, it looks like a lot of defense disappeared, maybe entered the transfer portal, or maybe just didn't want to go to the bowl game, because there's one thing that's for sure this year, and that is Washington State was majority defensive. So for them to just absolutely get rolled by a Mountain West team, and just not show up defensively was kind of like, all right, no, definitely something was there. But I'm not really sure. I'm not using this to defend Washington State. It was embarrassing. And, Fresno State took the dubster. Florida versus Oregon State. I was terribly wrong about this one. I said Florida would win because I took the committee. I took what the committee said. Sorry for the Discord sound, by the way. I took what the committee said, and I was like, dude, 6-6 versus 9-3. I'm gonna be real. They probably know something's up. But Anthony Richardson just says, I'm going to the NFL, and what? He's a sophomore? I did not know that, of course. I didn't know anything going into these bowl games. They were predictions. I didn't know. So Florida got absolutely slaughtered. Huge victory for Oregon State. I'm honestly so happy that they managed to do this. Oregon State finishes 10-3, and even though I'm a Beaver hater, I don't like the Beavers, I was so happy about their season, and honestly, I was rooting for them. Well, I'm not really like a Beaver hater. I would like so many more teams than the Beavers. And I was rooting for them a lot this season. Marshall versus UConn. Oh, no, we're done. That was the last one. The Marshall-UConn game is being played right now. So, yeah, I don't know what happened to the Oregon State game. We'll just keep going over this. Try and make the video longer. No turnovers by either team. Florida State they went for 2 4th downs, didn't get it. Oregon State went for 1 4th down, and they got it. Overall, Oregon State just had more yards on offense, 353 against 219. It just looks to me like this entire game. Oh, I know Florida missed a field goal, but yeah, this was literally 0-30. They put on a fucking stupid field goal at the end. Nobody cared. Like, it was just to make it, I don't know, somewhat closer. It was just Florida couldn't capitalize. They couldn't finish. So Oregon State took the easy victory. And Oregon State was a very good team this year. It's so sad that they finished off with 3 losses. They could have literally been a playoff contender. But that's all. Part 1, donezo. That's all for me. Oh, you should like and subscribe. That's cool. Leave a comment. Tell me what your predictions were. And that's all for me. Adios.